थोड़ा loud.
So, what drives you?
I think I don't know, it's hard to explain. Like, even though after all these years of being around squash, it still excites me. And as a player, as a coach, watching squash, it still excites me. And I think people think maybe I've had enough of it and do something else, but I really enjoy it. And I still like to compete, even though it's becoming harder for me. But the coaching side really enjoys me, and I get some really good opportunities coming to countries, meeting new people, making new friends. So I think that's the reward that I get from all my hard work in my singles career, and now as a coach. I'm lucky to get good opportunities like this.
So, what was that moment in which you actually realized that I want to take up squash and become the world number?
I think I was probably maybe like 15 years old, 16 years old. My junior, I was getting better. As a junior, I wasn't the best when I was the youngest, and every year I got older, I got better. And by the time I got to 19, I was the #1 junior in Australia, and that's when I started to play PSA. But I think probably from about 15 or 16, it was like, okay, I want to do everything possible to become a professional athlete. In my day, in those days, college wasn't really an option, so turning pro was a good option for me then. So I turned pro when I was like 18 after high school, and I haven't looked back.
So, was there any moment in which it hit you that, okay, squash is my thing, I want to do it?
I think the results, obviously, there was always ups and downs, and there was times I doubted it maybe. You have some bad losses, and obviously it's hard. I was traveling away from my home and family and by myself, and when you have bad results when you're by yourself, you're thinking, is this really worth it? But I think there was different categories, like obviously when I went to top 50, that was a big thing for me, and then top 30, and then I made top 20, so that made me into the main draw of all the... Yeah, and just working on goals and started to win some tournaments, and so every sort of stage you get sort of respect from other players, rewards, obviously, so it was all sort of one step at a time, and it's always a big thing going top 10 in the world, and then it was top 5, and then winning my first major tournament. So.
Why don't you tell us how many major titles you won?
In squash, the two biggest tournaments that we look at is the World Open every year and the British Open. So World Open I won twice in 2002 and 2006. The British Open I won 4 times. So 2001 and then 2003, 2004. So I won it back-to-back years, which was nice. And then I had a couple of years off, well not off, where I didn't win it. And then I came back and I won it in 2008.
So what would you say were your prime golden years?
Probably the middle part of my career. I think probably when I was maybe 25 to about 32. Even though the last couple of years I still was top 10, but I probably wasn't at my best, and my life started to change. I had my family, my 2 daughters. Squash wasn't always the #1, but I still was trying to do it, so I sort of hung in there the last couple of years of my career without doing as much work as I was when I was 100% focused. But I had a pretty long, like I started when I was 18 and I retired when I was 36, so I had a long career, and I had 12 years in the top 10 in the world consecutively, so I was very consistent with my game. So
who's your favorite player while growing up, while you were playing now?
Sure. I have a lot of different players. Obviously, I looked up and tried to study the famous guys like Jahangir and Jeff Hunt, Jonah Barrington. And then there was a lot of very good Australian players early in my career, like Rodney Martin, Chris Dittmar. There was a lot of top Australian players, Brett Martin. And then obviously my rivals through my career, I had guys like Jonathan Powell, Peter Nicol, John White, Terry Linku, and then I had some of the Egyptian guys like Shabana and Darwish, and then Rami, and then Gaultier, Willstrop. There was a long era of players. And then Nick Matthews, obviously, don't forget Nick Matthews. So I was lucky enough to play through sort of 3 different eras of very high top players.
So, is there anything you enjoy more than squash?
I think obviously my family comes first, like anything. So my wife, my 2 daughters, they always come first. Obviously, I like to do things. I like to spend time with my family. I like to. I'm pretty sporty. I like other sports as well. I like golf. I like watching tennis, playing some tennis. But obviously, squash is a big part of it. Even if I'm not playing now my new job at Cornell is a little different as well, and managing the team, looking after a lot of players, recruiting, trying to look for the next big superstars, trying to convince players to come to Cornell and play on my team. So it's a little bit of a different role. It's not just on-court coaching, so it's been a nice change for me as well. So yeah.
So also coaching, how was the transition from being a great, world #1 squash player to becoming, or still on the way to becoming the best coach?
Sure. Obviously, I tried to really take what I learned in the game and what worked for me and what was successful for me in my training, try to adapt it to my coaching style. I learned a lot. My coach, Sean Moxon, taught me a lot, and I think he's also considered one of the top coaches in the world. And obviously, I like what he did with me, and I try to repeat it, and then I try to add my own new thoughts and ideas, and I still follow the game. I watch the recent guys and the top girls, and I'm coaching a lot of women players as well, so the game's a little different, so I try to study the women's game a little bit as well, and I just try not to get complacent, and I'm trying to come up with new ideas and to keep it fresh and fun. So it's not easy all the time, but and at the end of the day, I put a lot of hours into it. I put a lot of court time in. I like to be mostly on court feeding. So again, like anything, when I put the effort in, I've been lucky enough to have some good results with my coaching, and hopefully many more to come.
So this may be a bit of a controversial question. What was that? Did you have like not an enemy, but one player that you always like? You kept playing in a final for some time.
Sure. It's again, I call them rivals, and off court we're all pretty friendly, and friendships build over a career because you're traveling with these guys a lot of the weeks of the year and staying with them in hotels. But obviously on court you have your rivals, and some players more than others. So every generation's like that, and again I had big battles with Peter Nicol and Jonathan Powell. Some of the Egyptian guys were hard to play, so you always had different players, and not always the top players. I had a couple of guys in around the 20 in the world that I struggled to beat sometimes, more so than maybe some of the other top 10 guys. So different playing styles were hard to match up against sometimes.
Was there any one match that you remember, or that, like, according to you, the toughest match you've ever played?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot. It's hard to pinpoint one match. Obviously, I had a couple of my World Opens. I came back from match points down to win them. But physically, the hardest match, it's hard to say. I lost the Commonwealth Games in 2006. I played Peter Nicol in the final, and I was sick all week going into it, but I played pretty good. I got to the final, and we had a really long. I lost in the final for the gold medal to Peter, but I think it was one of the best matches. It nearly went for 2 hours, and probably at the end I was physically probably the tightest I've ever been, and I couldn't have done anything more to try to win it. But on the day he was too good for me. But that was probably one that I remember.
And you have a reputation for being you have like good stamina and like a strong fitness.
Sure.
So what's the secret behind that, and how is it helping?
Yeah, there's no real secret. It's just hard work. Obviously, my coach Sean and myself came up with different fitness ideas and to try to adapt it to squash. And obviously, you got to experience the big test this week, and we did a lot of court sprints, so we mixed it up a lot. But just hard work, and I put the work in training, so the matches would be easier for me. So when I got into a tournament and to win tournaments you got to win 5 matches in 5 days. Maybe there's one rest day, but it's pretty hard schedule, so you've got to be used to that and put the work in the training. And the results came because of the hard work I did in the day-to-day training.
So while you're playing a tournament, just before the tournament, what is it that goes through your mind? Do you have any mental?
Sure. Obviously, as I'm leading up to the big tournaments, I was trying to peak for them, but in the training, I would try to visualize my situation and playing some of my, you talked about my rivals and doing the beep test or doing some fitness tests. I would maybe try to imagine that I'm running or racing one of my competitors, or when I'm doing the sprints, when I'm really pushing myself hard, I'm thinking, okay, it's 8 all in the 5th, and how am I going to win this point? And I would sort of try to visualize winning the last 3 or 4 points of a really close match against one of my opponents, and think about what shots I would try to hit. And so I think visualization under pressure is a good thing. So that's something that I did a lot in my training.
So do you have any strict don'ts for your pupils, or anything that you did not at all touch while you were playing?
It depends on the player a little bit. And as a coach, I can't totally force someone to totally do something. Obviously, at the end of the day, it's their choice. Obviously, I can advise them. Obviously, you shouldn't do drugs, and obviously alcohol is a no-no. So things like that. When you're playing, you've got to, again, your body's like an engine. You got to look after it. But again, I think getting the rest, and obviously there were sacrifices and missing out on some things because I needed to be resting and not going out late. So there's always going to be sacrifices in anything, and they're a big part of the day-to-day choices. And it really shows the ones that want to really give themselves a chance to be a top athlete, or ones that want to be a top athlete but they're happy with a certain level. So.
The first time you lost, what was your biggest sacrifice?
Biggest sacrifice was moving away from my home country. Leaving Australia. Australia was too far away. All the tournaments were in Europe or America or Middle East. So I've really left Australia like 20 years ago. I still see my parents. I still talk to my parents every couple of days. But obviously, not being there a lot has been the biggest sacrifice to date. Okay, my pleasure. My pleasure. It was fun. I look forward to coming back later in the year again. So.
And lastly, do you just have any advice for all of us?
I think obviously this week I tried to give you a lot of information. Hopefully you take it back and use some of it to change maybe your daily routine or add some of my ideas into your training. And I'll be interested when I come back in, I think I'm coming back later, September, October. I'll be interested to see the improvements, and that would be nice to, obviously as a coach. And that's a hard thing, obviously just coming for a week, it's good, but obviously now the hard work really gets when I leave and you have to go back to your day-to-day training. And again, it's working hard, doing the hard thing, doing the warm-up, doing the stretching, doing the core sprints, doing the fitness, working on the technical information. So it's really, you really have now 5 months, 6 months to really make some changes to your game, and it'd be nice when I come back to see how much improvements there've been. So. All right, my pleasure. Thanks, mate.